Sorry.
Well, it is 7:05. Shall we get started?
Sure.
Yeah.
Shauna, are you doing the honors?
Yeah, just want to welcome everybody. And our guest speakers are Paul and Al. So Paul and Sarah both own Pure Gynt, J105. Al owns Creative, J105. So you'll see kind of, some video footage from those boats today. And this is our second session on RaceQs. But if you didn't join last week, don't worry about it. We'll cover, any kind of beginning stuff that you have. And it's a small group, it's casual. And the hope is that it's a great app. And the hope is that people will use that. And the more people that use it, we can use it as a learning tool to, if you own your boat, how to kind of get better. And then if you're just kind of learning how to sail or race, we can use it to talk about tactics and choices and that kind of thing. So thank you, Sarah, for being the moderator. And Paul and Al, do you guys want to go ahead and get started?
Sure.
Sure. I think we should let everybody know that they're being recorded.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Al. So yeah, everyone's being recorded so that in case we want to kind of post this and people want to kind of go back and learn some stuff about things about RaceQs, that'll be possible. So.
Okay. So let me see if I can share a screen here. Hi, I'm Paul. So we had a conversation last week. And that conversation was about RaceQs and the basics. And we recorded that, and that's up on YouTube. If anybody needs a link, we can send it out as well. I think I have a link in the presentation, but that's not very helpful.
So Paul, I can talk to Cindy and we can put a link on it on the CYC website.
Great.
Okay.
Excellent. And then Sarah, is there a way to also, like, I'm in full screen mode. Maybe I don't want to be in full screen mode. Maybe that's what I want. So I can see other stuff, maybe present.
Yep, you can do that.
And then can I see the participants or something?
Oh, you can bring up the participants from the bottom, right? Well, I have a panel of fighting.
It's the fighting between full screens or something. It's no big deal. I think I'm in Chrome now. Okay, sounds good. Let me just
share one of your windows and leave the rest of your windows exactly however you like.
Say that again?
When you share your screen, one of the choices is to choose a window.
Yes, okay.
So, yeah, so pick just that window to share and then you leave the rest of your screen all alone.
Okay, I could try that. The reason why I might not want to do that is if I have to switch Chromes and things like that. I think I'm going to go back to the desktop. It worked last time. I don't know why I can't see other people, but it's fine. Just something about talking. It feels like I'm talking.
Up in the upper right-hand corner of your Zoom screen, it says speaker view or gallery view. Click that and choose gallery view if you want to.
I have that. I can see you guys. And now if I say share desktop, you guys disappear. So, yeah, now I just have a little control bar. Zoom US view, manage participants, meeting. Doesn't matter. Okay, I'll make do. Thanks so much, everybody. I'm sharing my screen. So previous presentations on YouTube, we talked a lot about the basics. Questions are encouraged. You can easily type them in the chat area and then we can queue them up. Maybe Sarah will interrupt or hopefully either I will pause or someone will remind me to pause as we segue. And then if there are any questions that you have that didn't get answered, you can send mail to me and we can try to get them answered for you. But there's also a ton of information on their site, which I think is great. So what did we do last week? Last week, we did this basic intro. We did a race replay from the 2020 Blakely Rock race, which actually didn't finish, but still was interesting from a strategy and tactics standpoint. And also in terms of the mechanics of RaceQs, how it works. And then Sarah also took some time to talk about the nuts and bolts of signing up and installing the app. This week, I'm going to go through the actual effort of and the work to create a race after everything has been recorded. And I'm going to actually go back in time to the 2019 Sketched Head race. Then we're going to, as part of that, we're going to go into a deep dive along the way while we're looking at the Sketched Head race to see all of the different tools that we can use inside of RaceQs to view what was recorded. And then we're going to use some of those tools at the end to review some side-by-side tune-ups that our boat did versus Creative, Peer Gynt did versus Creative. And I think that RaceQs really helps there because it can be hard when you're doing tune-ups to really understand what the difference was between the two boats, and tune-ups are a critical way to make your boat faster. Just to review, RaceQs is, it is an app that runs on your phone. And I did want to say this again, you don't have to use their app actually. It turns out that any device that you have that can record a GPX file, which includes Navionics, and I'm sure a few of the other sailing, charting apps can also work. And then you upload it by hand. But if you use their app, it has a bunch of nice features. Then at the end, you go sailing, it just sits there, it runs silently on your phone. You really don't look at it during the race. And then at the end of the day, you upload what you recorded, and then it shows up on the website and you can go to raceqs.com to see it. We're gonna really be digging into the raceqs.com part of it because we already talked about the app. And what'll happen is you'll go to your website and you'll see something that looks like this. And actually, this is kind of half an answer to a question we had earlier. I was able to search for the word creative on the site. When I searched for the word creative, I saw that Al Hughes showed up. And then when I clicked on Al, I saw that he had recorded the CYC Sketched Head on March 9th, 2019. That's kind of handy because I didn't actually attend to this race. My boat was laid up without an engine. Basically, it was a great race. A lot of people were in the class, in Creative's class. I think 8 boats, and 8 boats actually recorded, and I think maybe only 1 boat didn't record. So it makes it a really interesting race to view.
Could I interrupt to ask, was it really 69 miles long?
No, I think that it recorded some distance afterwards.
Yeah, and neither was it 8 hours.
So it recorded some distance afterwards, but it really didn't end up being an issue. So that's a great question. I don't pay much attention to those numbers. I usually just look, you get this little visualization. It looks like an actual map. And so you say, hey, was that the race I raced? And generally it is, and I just call it done. Part of that, this is also a bit of a question answer for Kirk, is you can go to that, and then if you click, you click somewhere on here and you can share it. I'll show you that in a second. And when you share, you get this option to share in a bunch of ways. And it gives you some links and some text, and you can actually click on these links and text and actually bring up in a browser. So let's go ahead and pretend I did do that clicking, and what'll happen here is it will have brought me up with this race here. And so you're like, how do I even get started? So the first thing to notice, and this is something that someone mentioned they got stuck on, is there's a little arrow here on the left-hand side. And if you don't click on that arrow, you can't do much. So that's an important thing to click on. And when you first click on it, it's gonna ask you to watch tutorial videos, and feel free to watch those tutorial videos or to skip them. But I've already gone through that process of watching those tutorial videos, and I'm gonna show you how to use it anyway. There are 3 little sub things at the bottom here. There's the thing that looks like race flags, and that's how we're gonna set up our regatta. There's a thing that looks like a fleet of boats, and that's actually all the boats that recorded that day. And then there's a thing which is for comparing pairs of boats during the race. So if you first get here and nobody's actually annotated the race, all you'll get is a bunch of boats kind of moving around. Not a bad thing. It's essentially like recording your track with Navionics or something like that, except you get everybody else's track too. Let me see if I can get my audio. I cannot click over here. So since I can't click over here, I'm going to zoom in a different way. This is always a hard thing that Zoom and the app that you're running may not agree. Okay, so here are all the boats. They're all doing what they're going to do. It turns out that, in fact, there's more boats than just this. You can pick the boats. There were several boats in other divisions here. Creative, Jaded, they're selected. Paladin is selected. Puff is selected. These are all J105s that we're racing in this particular start. 212 turns out to be the boat now called Insubordination. They were trying to figure out their name at the time. There's more Jubilee, Corvo 105. And then there's a couple of other things. Here's an interesting one. Puff 2. Probably somebody on the crew of Puff also ran RaceQs. And so there's two Puffs. Let's just show one. Why not? So I haven't unclicked them. Otherwise, I can click them and they appear and disappear. Also, Gusto, they started in a different start. I think start 5. Let's not include them, even though they're a 93 as well. And there's a number of others. I think different drummer was DD and Darkside and so on. So how do you create a start? Well, the first thing you do is you create a regatta. By the way, this had already been entered, but I went ahead and deleted it so that we could redo it. Let's call it CYC. This was the sketch it had. Right. And then let's create a division. Might as well just, since it happens to be the J105s, I'll just call it J15. We can create a start. I happen to know they started at 1010. So I could just go here and type 10, 1 design start. There's a whole bunch of race types here. As far as I can tell, these haven't made a big difference in anything that I've observed. I think they might, but maybe they're just here for you to leave a little note. And now I have a start and I have, but no race marks. So let's create a mark. Let's just assume the finish line. Actually, that's not always the case for CYC. Let's just create a start line. And I'll just save it. And we'll come back to how I'm going to adjust it in a second. And later I'll create a mark. And let's go to the time, which is our actual start, which is 10:10. And we notice that.
Hey, Paul, where does it say the time in the race? I don't see what you're looking at.
Right-hand corner here. Can you see that, Sarah?
Yep, thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, that's great. Good question. Creative appears to be on the other side of the line at 10:06. Not a big deal. They're rushing back, it looks like. And I think Jaded might have gotten forced over or something and had to go back. So we're going to see how that works in a second.
Yeah, that is true, Paul. We were both trying to get back to the line. We were a little off on our timing.
You guys out of order or something weird like that, right? Like your start was not after the previous start. It was something weird happened. All right, so now one question is, where's the start line? Who's helping me figure out where the start line is? This is just where the heck the CYC guys put some stuff down. And you can see all of a sudden the boats take off like crazy. And so they must have been thinking about starting. And this is 11, so where were they at? 10:10. I'm moving time forward and backward with the arrow keys. Okay, this is 10:09:59. Most of the boats must have been behind the line at this time. So I'm just going to guess that the starting line is roughly.
It looks to me like it must be tilted compared to where it is right now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to move this line.
Move right. It's kind of right between creative and Jaded. We're actually, yeah. So we're coming around the pin.
I see.
And Jaded actually did get forced over right there. So the next boat back was behind the line. It was very pin favored. Yeah, and go further right or east.
Further east. So the pin comes over.
Yeah, right between. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Yeah, right.
Oh, I remember
Maybe,
you actually sneak back and go around the outside of the mark even, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Right, here he goes. Yeah, so you can see Creative making a little bend there. Why don't I go ahead and put a mark on Creative, like his track? Oh, I see what's going on. I have this weird little zoomy thing, and it gets in the way of what I want to click on. So my apologies, guys. So let's go ahead. Oh, that's so weird. It keeps giving me zoom options when I click on the screen. I'm thinking about making this less than full screen. I hope it doesn't kill you guys.
That's still very visible for us. No problem.
Okay, sorry. I'm trying to figure out where to put it. Okay. All right. So you can see Creative's track there, and
I think you'll see Jaded actually turn around.
right. But now I want Jaded to be on the right side of the mark. So what am I going to do? So I mean, Creative to be on the correct side of the mark. So I'm going to put a little track here. Sorry, guys. The zoom thing is making it a little bit harder. Let's do a 30-minute track for Creative. And so now when I come back and I want to set the start line, I can say, well, Creative had ducked underneath the pin. It must have been there.
Yeah.
And let's go back in time a little bit. Puff. Everybody else was behind the line. It's like good enough. Jada goes back around.
Yeah. And goes right around the.
Good enough for government work here.
Yep.
All right. So one thing that's funny and sometimes happens is Jaded doesn't even start their app until the start time of the beat, I believe.
Yes.
They went ahead. Now, that's just, I mean, I understand why some people do it, and maybe they're thinking they're saving battery or they're saving, you know, memory, and I think that's all fair, and if that's what you really want to do, you can, but you miss the start for your own boat, which is actually pretty useful. So I typically get it to start at least 20 minutes or half an hour before my start time. It's one less thing to do, and also things just work out better that way.
And so, Paul, tell them about you know, presetting the start time.
So the app allows you to do a preset start. We talk about it in the previous video. So if anybody wants that, you know, to see how to do that, they can go back to the video. But basically, when you start up recording, you can set a preset start time, and I just say, hey, I think I'm going to start at 10:10, but you never know what CYC is going to do, so maybe I'll just set it for 9:50. So I'm fairly certain that I'm going to get the start. So okay, so let's just assume I've got the start in the right place now. All the boats, they seem to sort of cross the line successfully. Paladin, Jaded goes back, Avalanche, Puff. Everybody seems pretty good. Okay, good. So I have, my next goal is to find the mark. I believe there's only one mark in this race. They basically sketch it head. And it's way up here. I've zoomed forward in time and I've zoomed forward in space. And let's put a mark on one other boat. Why not? Just it'll make it a little easier. I'll do Jaded. And then when I zoom in here, I can see all these boats went around some point that was roughly here. So I'll make another mark. And I'll just stick that mark in that hole. Now, one of the things I noticed is, see that little tiny red dot that's already there? I think that's from a previous or a different race, and it's just meant to say, hey, this is not an uncommon place for people to put a mark. It just helps you when you set the mark for your own race. So now I have the second mark. You see that I have available marks here in one column, and I have the actual race marks in another column. And now let's go ahead and see if we can set the finish. Everybody's charging on back. Let's see, it's roughly, people are charging back. And it may be exactly the start line. It should be interesting. It may not be exactly the start line. As things drift. I've seen them use a much smaller finish line. So far, so good. Everybody seems to have passed it. Creative.
Yeah, I think on that day it was exactly the same.
It was. So then I think you can drag in the start line as the finish line here too. And I think that'll work. Otherwise, the only reason I want to see here. Yeah, so it thinks it's another leg. So I have to actually make a finish line. So in order to make that finish line, I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to create another mark. I could have made a start finish line, but instead, because I kind of spent some time on the finish line, I'll go ahead and on the start line, I'll set up a finish line. Finish line by default in a funny place. Let's just line it up. I have a start line and a finish line in the same place. And here's a cool feature. You can come here and if it's working, doesn't seem to be working. Start finish. You may have to actually create a start finish line. Sorry guys, I'm not the super expert here. Let's create a start finish line. Move that up here. Start finish line is in a bad place. I can get rid of the start line. Move the start finish line up here. Start finish line. The feature that I'm looking for.
Hey, Paul.
Yep.
So Wayne asked on the chat, which I thought was a really cool idea, is pre-start. If you are tracking, like say you start your tracking at 950, is you just sail all the way around the start and finish marks, and you'll have little circles left right there.
Absolutely. A lot of people in, super competitive fleets will ping the ends of the line using their onboard computers. And if you're tracking while you're pinging, then you'll see exactly that. So we're missing a feature. My biggest problem with RaceQs is sometimes I don't understand how every feature comes and goes. But let's now that I've went ahead and I made the starts and the finish, we can just look to see that it's actually working.
Can you pause for a sec before you go back to that? And let's answer all the questions in the chat since we took a little moment.
Great.
So Kirk also asked a good question too. Can regular fixed marks be added in a way that they always exist, like the Hamburger or Blakely Rock or Spring Beach?
I haven't seen it.
But you said there is a little dot there when it's a regular.
Little dot, and I don't know exactly how to use that little dot and make it like a permanent thing.
Okay, great. And Glenn asked to remind him what the color coding is behind the boat's trail.
That's the speed the boat is traveling at. And we can see that in a second. Let's go ahead and take two boats that we think were competitive at the front. Let's not use Jaded because they didn't finish, and Creative struggled a little bit too. If I remember, maybe
Jubilee.
Say again?
Jubilee.
I thought Corvo did very well that day.
Corvo did well. 212.
Where is Corvo? Interestingly, where is Corvo? Hold on.
I think they're another person that
I just didn't click them here. So since I didn't click them, I can't go here. And now all of a sudden do more Corvo. And I can do Corvo versus Jubilee. And we can go into the race. Let's go forward about here. And let's go to match racing view. And so the color of the track is the speed the boat is traveling at. And if you want to have your sort of like your big data freak, you can have this much more detailed looking graph superimposed over the boat. So now you can see that they currently believe that more Jubilee is sailing at 7.4 knots speed over ground versus Corvo's 6.7 here. VMG is 5.5. Why Corvo doesn't have a VMG is a good question. Things come and things go a little bit. Let me go ahead and see if like 212 has a VMG. 212 does not have a VMG. What if I did Corvo over here? Only our friend More Jubilee did. Okay, so, wow, look at this. Creative's caught up somehow. Who knows how they pulled that off? And yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thing. Let's see how they caught up, right? So I go back here. Actually, interestingly, this thing is in a funny state. My race marks have now disappeared. And
they just came back or something.
yeah, I don't see my race marks anymore.
Further north, right there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There they are in the thing, but then my timeline is not showing it right.
Oh, right.
Maybe I picked the wrong boats here. Well, Creative, you were the boat. Okay. So you were the boat. I'm actually looking at your recording. So that might make a big difference.
Oh, I got it. Yeah.
So that's why the timeline is now annotated at the bottom. And let's zoom out a little bit. Let's see Creative versus Corvo. We'll get rid of this pretty complex overview, and we'll see that Creative is already caught Corvo. You caught him, like, even though you had a little bit of trouble at the start.
Yeah, I think we actually went like right behind him.
Yeah, and then okay, so you didn't have as much trouble as maybe
Jaded.
Yeah, Jaded
and 212.
So here's the thing to observe. You see how Creative's track is a little messy? Al mentioned this last week, and he and I have had a chat about it. It turns out it's because either the GPS on his phone is not doing that great. And one possibility is that it's too deep in his boat. Like, oftentimes it will work if it's in your boat, but not always if it's like in a very crowded little spot. And as a result, it's a lot noisier than if it was out in space. Now, one of the things I've been talking about is that you can actually make your recording in a different way if this is not working out well for you. And one other way to do it is by connecting to the instruments on your boat directly. And you can do that with Navionics. I know you can. And you can also do it with by having your, I think you can have RaceQs also connect directly to the instruments on your boat. So,
Christy asked about live streaming too.
So you can live stream. There is something called like Regatta View. There's a 5-minute delay, and you have to, as you record your track using the RaceQs app, now all of a sudden you have to use the RaceQs app. Then there's an experience that looks just like this, but it's live. I've never used it. And so,
Paul, is it live or live delay?
5 minutes delay.
Yeah.
And Paul, have you ever asked if it's possible to remove the delay? I know they were, at least I read somewhere in their commentary that they were putting a delay in because they didn't want it to bias participation in the race.
Yeah, that some people could. I mean, you know, so here's a short answer to your question. I've reached out to them about a number of questions over the last year or so. I haven't heard much back from them. I think in general, RaceQs is not under super active development. So if you have questions or feature requests, I feel it's very unlikely that you're going to see a major change in the way this app works. I'm hopeful that they'll continue to fix bugs. The 5 minutes, I don't know. You know, I think one question is, would there ever be a time where people wanted to sit in CYC, put it up on the big screen, and then watch it live? And if they did, would they care if it was 5 minutes delayed? It's a great question. I don't know the answers to those. Okay, so now we've gone ahead and annotated the race. The one feature I was hoping to show, which I have not been able to show, maybe if I get rid of this finish line, I have a start finish line, I have a finish line, leg one, start finish line, and was that it can actually take times at the end if you get to the very end, and normally you would get them here for some reason, it still believes that these boats are finishing. They're in downwind leg 2. I've seen it work better in the past where the boats have get times actually assigned. And the times are actually real useful times. They're times that you could just type into SailWave and use as it's not quite working today. I think probably if I had 20 minutes to poke around it, I could make it work again, but it's not working today. All right, so that is how you annotate a race. Before I go anywhere, are there questions? I know several people were able to ask questions.
I have a question. Are you going to talk about how you record it so you can post it to Facebook or something else? How do you make a video?
Yeah, so what I've been doing, and this was a special request from Al, who had some trouble with his computer viewing these fancy additional features that I have, zooming in and out, is I just do a screen capture from my, and I will almost certainly do that for any race that I've participated in. I kind of let this thing play back. I start the time, you know, I start my recording back here. I usually set the start, you know, we zoom in here. Al, have you noticed the green box is missing? It's like,
yeah.
I don't know when the green box appears and when it doesn't.
I figured that's your thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so here we are, we're in a race view. And then I would just start my screen capture and I kind of steer it around and I try to let everybody keep most of the boats in view. And then I post that to Facebook or YouTube. And I will continue to do that. But other people can do that as well. Does that answer your question, Sarah?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, sure. A couple of views here. I never used most of these views. There's one that sort of like you can pretend to be the guy behind the boat here. Is this good, bad? I don't know. I don't ever use it. There's another one which is more like drone view, maybe. This is one I use all the time, which is when two boats are sailing against each other. And specifically, I like to do it. We're gonna come back. I'm gonna sort of figure out what I did wrong with this thing, but there are times when we can see the different types of things that the boats are doing and see them head to head.
Well, Paul, the last, you were just on the tracking and it showed the color kind of code.
Yes, that's right. Hold on a second. If I
somebody asked about the colors.
Yeah, and the colors have supposedly, if you enter that the boat was like a laser, then you get one sort of set of colors, and if you enter that the boat is a 105, you get another set of colors. They're meant to be appropriate for the actual type of boat, and that's set up here, I think. Oops. No, I think it's here, and I edit it. And then, oh, I have default. I can actually make it like a 105. Actually, now I'm curious. If I go back here, boat still looks like a Beneteau or something. The other view that I use a lot is the full up map view. You can zoom in. You can take a look at the boats here. You can change the direction of north. Zoom in and out. Smaller, larger, stuff like that. Okay, so let me go back to my slides. I'm gonna stop this for a second. And so we've annotated a race. These were all the people that recorded. This was actually, no, Liftoff did not record. But almost everyone else did. It made the race a lot easier to see, and it was an interesting day to be able to relive. Boy, Al, I've seen many, many spellings of your name here. This is yet another one. This was CYC.
Yeah, it's like Uncle Howard, Hughes.
Yes,
just like the picture.
I don't know why you seem to get a different spelling every time. All right. So now there are a lot of analytics features, which I kind of poked at in the first talk last week, and I poked at just now, but I think they're going to really pay off a lot more when we look at this tune-up that we did between Al's boat and my boat. And this is something I would encourage other people to go and do. So why don't we just drill down to a tune-up? My windows are all moved around now. That's so funny. And I am going to do tune-up 1. Let's kill this. So there's only 2 boats. And we went out and we just said, hey, let's sail together. In order to get the features to really go on, I generally add a start line and marks, and they are very helpful to the analytics process. Otherwise, you really can't see these numbers and other pieces of information. But one of the things I find super helpful in this side-by-side tune-up, we haven't even started yet, like we were just chatting, trying to figure out if we're going to start, is this feature where you can see once you cross the start line, I'll zoom in again, you can see this kind of distance measure, which is distance in the direction of the estimated wind on how the 2 boats are doing. Let me turn off some of the other features. You can also see this kind of maybe a little bit too verbose thing, and the boats are 39 meters apart here, as measured in the direction of the estimated wind. It was, I think we were seeing 8 to 10 knots of wind this day. This is the day when we headed pretty far north. And 30-minute track. We're going to go around this mark and keep going. So I don't know, Al, did you want to talk about this at all? Like,
well, I think one thing to see is you try to get the boats set up. We did most of this testing going to weather. That's the easiest thing to do. And you don't want to be too close and you don't want to be too far away. You can sort of see on this track, we tried to set up so the wind influence off the leeward boat isn't affecting the weather boat. But after all these tune-ups, the takeaway I had is they are pretty good one design boats. There's not a lot in it. We both run different sails. We each have different masts, but the same vintage kind of boats. They're both scrimp boats. They're both pretty well prepared, clean bottoms and all that. So my takeaway is they're very evenly matched, and I think it does come down to sailors and trimming and where you put yourself on the race course.
Yeah, I would say that's the biggest thing for us is, I mean, I would say if there had to summarize one thing that was different between the 2 boats is that we will often sail a little bit higher.
Yes, but that's why I'd like to sail with you. But I think we tend to be lower than everybody. But I am sort of a driver helmsman, not a pointer helmsman.
Right. And so here's an example where the 2 boats started off back here with a kind of a clear gauge. Maybe he was the lines were maybe 2 boat lengths apart, 3 boat lengths apart, with Creative on the higher line. Here maybe Creative and Peer Gynt are on almost the same angle. But then you consistently go a little bit faster and a little bit lower as time progresses. I'm going to speed up time here by clicking on this little red thing. And you don't lose any distance. Maybe you gain, in fact.
Maybe, yeah, it's one of those very hard to tell. I mean, the VMGs look better, but
yeah, and it's I think partially because of your GPS issue, Al, you have a little bit of wiggle where we don't have wiggle, and that wiggle, you don't want to read too much into that wiggle. And So we'll tack here. I put a mark in.
Yeah, also you could see creative drop down in, and we're starting to get the dirty air from pure Gynt.
Yes,
So,
as soon as you did, it was a good time to tack.
yeah, and we'll start again on the other board.
And then we decided we were too far away from you here, actually, and decided to come down to you, because otherwise you get different wind. And we said, hey, we just need to be closer. And so we came down and said, okay, right about here, we said, okay, great. Now we're back. Let's tune again. And you can see a lot when you're out on the water, to be honest with you, but this was a good way to sort of like either confirm or deny any of our intuitions once we.
Yeah, and for the others watching this, we were also playing. One boat would stay fixed, and the other boat would maybe drop the traveler down or sheet the jib tighter. We didn't annotate what exactly is happening right now, but we did that typical 2-boat testing sort of stuff. That once one boat was faster, then we try to get the other boat to catch up and get even faster, and you kind of leapfrog your way along.
Hey
Now that
guys,
brings up a good point, which is how could we annotate that on the fly? Maybe if we had a voice recorder or something, what could we add so that later when we go back on RaceQs, we could say, oh yeah, that's where we put the jib car back.
I think that's very good point, Sarah. Or a logbook or something. Yeah. At X time we did this.
Yeah.
is there a way to upload pictures or do things while you're recording that you could time sync with the recordings?
So as I said, RaceQs has some features which may not change, and they have other features which I think they got to what maybe was an early beta, early alpha, and then I'm not sure they really work, but they're not supported. So one was the ability to upload a video, and they call it the GeoVids. I don't think it currently works, but there would be a way to have actually a video window in the corner here, completely synced. So at least you could maybe see and hear what you were doing. Another way to go, and it's not necessarily integrated with RaceQs, is I think if you change something on your boat, one thing you can do is take a picture of what you just changed. And the nicest thing about a new cell phone is every photo I take with my cell phone both has a time and date down to the second, right? As well as a GPS location. So in theory, we could just drop little pictures, at locations and know when we changed anything because I took a picture of it. And the picture itself should kind of help remind you what you changed.
That's another very good point, Paul.
Yeah. So it's not hard to get the dates and times out of the photos. Most photo editing tools will get the dates and times and GPS locations, but it's not integrated with RaceQs terribly well. Good question about how we might make notes. This is another example of us maybe being 2 degrees higher than creative. It's really not a lot higher, and it's certainly not faster. At one point, I was talking with Sarah, I was like, maybe we should go low like creative and see if we can get a different mode. And I think when we try to go as low as creative, then we normally don't keep up. It's just one of these weird things. I think it's partially we're used to trimming for height. And when things go back and forth like half a meter, I'm not sure I believe RaceQs that much. I mean,
Right.
Clearly GPS is only good to a few meters.
But you can see the trends with the tracks, I think, really, rather than the measurements.
Sure, absolutely. And last week, as you'll see in the YouTube video, there was a time when we went downwind, and then for some reason, Pure Gynt was able to go a little bit deeper, but keep the speed. And downwind, that was very helpful to us. One thing
Paul, are you going to show some of the features then about the tacking and how to analyze them?
Yes, that's a great call. Thank you, Shauna. So there's 2 features which I think may or may not be great. First one is I'm going to turn off some other stuff. Maybe I'll even turn this one off. Okay, so you see these little tack turds that got left behind? I'm gonna pause. Anytime you see a tack turd, you can click on it and it will tell you what the tacking angle was. It'll tell you how far you oversteered. That's an excellent question about what exactly they mean by oversteering. It probably means that you steered 89 degrees rather than 78 degrees, and then you ended up at 78 degrees, and you came out a little fat in the effort to speed up.
Right, but I think that's also very common speed building.
Yeah, that's the way I was taught to tack, and you know, with heavy wind you don't do it, but with light to medium.
Yep. But I think comparing them, you could see one tack, oh, I oversteered 10 degrees, but the next tack I oversteered 20.
Right.
And the tack after that, I only oversteered 5. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So what's interesting is it's clearly attempting to do something here and failing a little bit, because it says the recovery time here is 9,989 seconds, which it isn't, and time lost was not a number. So something's going on here, and it's not great. Here, it looks like it sort of worked. The tacking angle was 87 degrees. As opposed to, and you can kind of almost see that, like we come in high and leave higher, and the lowest speed was 3 knots. You know, I think what you do with these numbers is not what they mean absolutely, but sort of when you're comparing two tacks and you can say, well, I remember that tack. We were out in the water, it was a terrible tack. Oh gosh, you know, it must have been because we overtacked, or it must have been because we tacked too slow. And this will help give you some numbers to help your analysis. But you can see sort of in retrospect, we tacked a lot less. Maybe we overtacked slightly, but then came out higher than creative. Is that good or bad? Well, right before the tack, back here, creative was kind of maybe slightly ahead. Then right after the tack, maybe we're ahead. Good question. A lot of that depends on its estimate of the wind direction. And if it changes the wind direction by 5 degrees, and this is an estimate, it's not a true wind direction, you may not have picked up anything. We can watch this go a little bit further. I think this is another example where we're just on that high mode. Okay, one more feature, which is related to the ones that you mentioned, Shauna. These lines are supposedly evidence that you're doing something good. These lines, as opposed to this sort of more smooth lines, which I'll turn off, these are what are called groove lines. They're turned on and off by this button. And the groove line says, hey, you're sailing really consistently. You're having consistent heading. You have a consistent sort of speed, and that must be good. And we do know not using the rudder and keeping the boat on an even heel and an even direction is really important. So in this particular groove line, let me see if I can get this going again.
Well, one thing I noticed just from the groove line, ours, the Creatives, is lower than Peer Gynt's. And I think it must be based a little bit on the, you know, the boat, what's the boat's been doing.
Yep. Yep. And you know, it's surprisingly consistent over, this is now like close to a kilometer or something, or a couple kilometers. But you can click on the groove lines also, and it'll tell you what the course was, 311, the speed through the groove, 6.2, and the VMG, 6.2. I don't know why they think the VMG is 6.2.
Well, because you have the mark right dead ahead.
Yeah, but that's not, isn't that VMC or something? Isn't VMG?
Well, except they're saying to the next mark.
Yeah.
Rather than something out dead to windward.
Yeah. And so we're instead of 311, we're 312 here, where speed is 6.1. And the Creative's actually quite far off their groove line here. I think they have to draw like a line.
Yeah.
That summarizes a long.
Well, you can see we come back down to it.
You must. But this is evidence that the boats are going very similarly, interestingly, right? But
the white line in between, is that between the
that is meant to be the, I think, the line, direct line to the mark.
Yeah, between the last mark and the next mark.
So Paul and Sarah, can we go ahead and open it up to questions
you bet,
now
you bet.
from people?
Please do. In fact, thank you so much for reminding us and pausing me. I'm
And
happy to
Keith,
take
I know you had a lot of questions kind of starting off with, so if you want to kind of throw some of those out, just maybe one at a time.
Temporary stop sharing so I can see people's faces, maybe.
Did Keith have to leave?
I don't see Keith on anymore. Maybe
Okay.
maybe near the end of the hour.
Yeah, it sounded like he had some family things, so maybe he had to go. Does anyone else have any questions?
You see a question of people's recording. Maybe I'll just read some questions.
Sure.
And circle start marks make sense. Experience do you have people recording with a phone hard mounted to the boat versus someone's pocket? So let me give you one thing they say. They say if you hard mount it to the boat, let's say you just go to some effort and put a little place to put it up there on top of the cabin top with a nice GPS view, but it's locked to the boat, pointed along the direction of the boat, as well as it won't move with respect to heel, you can actually tell it to record, orientate the direction of travel, as well as the heel of the boat. And that supposedly improves things. I do think it's okay if you're inside the boat. I know Al puts it in his drawer, and I think maybe if there was someplace in between in your boat, Al, that was neither in your drawer nor like out on top of the cabin,
Yeah.
it might help you. But the reality is that if you do hard mount it, I would hard mount it maybe up near the ceiling. One of my crew members tried to tape it to the ceiling. The problem is it falls off. But imagine that you had a little place to slip it inside your headliner or something like that.
Yeah.
Then you can turn on recording of orientation and recording of heel. It's supposed to be a nice feature. I don't know. I haven't used it ever. The delay is built in. I doubt they're going to change it. And then we mentioned the drawer. So those are the questions I see. Does anyone else have a question?
Don't see anything.
Okay.
Hey, Paul, Rusty here. I do have a question just in terms of these different apps. You know, Wayne and I are both Thistle sailors and have used, years ago, we had the old Garmin GPSs that the fleet actually owned, and we gave them out to everybody before each race and let them record for the night and then uploaded them. And it was a bit of a nightmare to administer, but it was pretty nice from an education standpoint. And this is much, much better than that. But has anyone looked at other apps, and do you have any pros and cons between this and something else?
So somebody recently asked me about an app which looks like it's a brand new app from Europe. Maybe it's called Cowindo or something like that, or Quindo or something. I don't know anything about it. It looks like you have to pay for it. And the reality is that actually, I think that's a good thing, because then at least those guys have a reason to support you if it's broken, right? You know, we're not paying for this thing. It makes it easier for people to start, but then who do you complain to if the app doesn't work? Which is one reason I say, hey, if you have better experience with Navionics than RaceQs, you might as well use Navionics to record your race and then upload the GPX file. Maybe just briefly, let me say, if you do have a Garmin that you like and it records, I know I sailed with a guy, he had Garmin, he had put all the race marks in the Garmin, and it told him if we were on the ley line and stuff like that, we're going to fetch a mark. I think that was great. That thing will record a file called the GPX file, right? You can upload that in RaceQs too. So you can get, you have a lot of options for recording data. I looked at the Cowindo thing. It looks kind of cool. It doesn't have as much visualization. It has per boat analytics, like the app actually will tell you, if it thought you were tacking well and stuff like that. Maybe it's more actively supported, but I didn't see a great reason to switch from what little I saw on the web. There used to be an app a long time ago called Katak or something like that.
Yeah, Katak.
Katak. I don't think that's been active for a long time.
Well, that's what we used to use, but it was expensive. It was like I don't know, $500 for a club license or something per year. So RaceQ may have a few issues, but free buys you a lot.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I enjoy watching the race on RaceQs. I think particularly I learn a lot about, gee, I should have stayed on one side of the course or the other side of the course. As long as RaceQs keeps going, it's not that hard for me to use, and it's not that hard for me to go back and look at what happened. It works way better if everybody uses it though. Because if I duck somebody, or if I'm like in traffic and in dirty air, but I can't see that in the review, I can remember it, but it's a lot nicer if I see there's 5 boats in front of me. That's why I tacked and did this. Why did I tack 3 times there? Well, I tacked 3 times to get out of dirty air. It was probably the right thing to do, but I don't know that unless I see the other boats.
As a discussion tool too, you know, you'd say, oh, you see when tried that leave out work here, they tacked off right away. Things like that too, you know, things you're trying to practice. You have a focus that you're trying to practice. It's great to go back and look at it and see if it really worked.
Absolutely. Now you mentioned you have a bunch of laser sailors. I know every kid has a phone, and phones are waterproof. I think it'd be kind of cool for the kids to be able to go back and see.
Yeah, I think we're actually gonna try that. So I mean, I'll talk to, you know, some of the kids that are coming out there and try it.
Yeah.
And
I
then
mean, there's no place on a laser to put your stuff. I mean, having been
well, they'd have to have a waterproof case, and you know, they'd have to be, you know, I mean, there's ways that we can do it. And we can talk about it. But a question I have for you, Paul, so it's like you said that there's a 5-minute delay, but if we have like a big, you know, CYC race, and if everyone uses RaceQs,
yeah,
can we then like display that at the clubhouse on the big TV?
That's what I understand.
Then, like spouses and people can kind of see things. Like if we're going up to Skagit Head and back, they can see what's going on.
Absolutely. That would be great. I think that would be super fun. We can definitely do that. Somebody needs to have a laptop at the club plugged into the TV or the projector. And then I believe you can do the live view.
Okay. Okay, that'll be, I think that'll be really fascinating. We need to try that, you know, when we get back to racing.
Yeah. Well, for the live, do you have to do something different with your phone?
I think the only thing you need to do is not turn off live streaming from RaceQs. You know, there used to be, see this thing here, it says live streaming on.
Yeah.
I think it's on by default.
Oh, it's on by default. So you, okay.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, let's say you have instruments on your boat you can connect to. If you do, you see here it says external data, internal data.
Oh, yeah.
You can click on that, and then you just enter the information about your instrument.
Oh, the Wi-Fi and stuff. Oh, yeah. Nice.
A lot of people have Navionics on their iPad on a boat, on the bigger boats, and they run it off their boat instruments using a connection that looks like this. Now, RaceQs, I think RaceQs is not as reliable as Navionics in terms of guaranteeing you're going to record a race. But the truth is, Navionics is not all that reliable either. Sarah's had it die on her. But so if you have an app that you love, you use it all the time for charting or something on your phone, and you can record with it, and at the end of the day, get a GPX out of it, you can just upload that. It won't, but back to Shauna's point, it won't go live though.
So I turned my RaceQs on right now, and I think I'm live streaming. Can you see me?
Oh, we have to set up a regatta.
Oh.
That's a great question though. Let's, why don't
you both have to be on the same.
Why don't we all go down to the dock one day? I'll set up a regatta and we'll see if we can see anything.
My live streaming default looks like it was off.
Okay.
You turned it off, Eric?
Looks like the default might have been off because it's just, it's already there.
Yeah, yeah.
So it looks like you're putting in all the marks and the start after the fact.
Yeah.
So something to consider if you're live streaming, someone might need to send coordinates back to the clubhouse so they can enter some data.
Absolutely.
And right. I bet they could probably do it within the live just to kind of put them in.
That's right. As I understand it, the live experience, it looks very much like that experience with the playback, and you can drop the marks in and start line and the finish line.
Sounds like something we could test.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, it is 8:04, so I'm wondering if we should start winding things up. Did we get all the questions answered?
Kirk, did you have some more questions that you wanted to ask?
I think my only other one now, it's going to take some time, but in a regatta, it sounds like if one person enters the marks on the start line, it's going to be visible for everyone?
Yeah.
And do we all have to put in the exact same regatta name for us to see it? Or
so actually, all you have to do is run the app, upload, and then magically everything that anyone else does is shared.
Okay.
So you don't.
And then see all the boats out there that happen to cross tax with you, and then on the left, which we saw you do, you check the boats that you want to follow.
That's right.
And then, so, you know, that all makes sense. But then if one person puts in the marks, the start line and the marks, everyone sees it that we're close?
That's exactly right.
Thanks.
Hey, Paul, one last question. Have you ever had trouble with people setting up 2 regattas in the same location where the boats get intermixed, or has that never happened?
Well, so in a weird little way, that sort of happens whenever you have multiple starts. And so you have that little menu on the left-hand side where you can click on the boat names. So you can turn off the boats that are not in your start anyway. And that could be good and bad, right? In a big, like if a TP52 sails over the top of me and, you know, and I got to tack out of the way, just because they're not in my start, you know, I kind of want to see that, oh, that's why I tacked away, you know? So I'm not sure I would turn that person off. On the other hand, you know, and I've never seen 2 regattas. Actually, I have seen 2 regattas. There was Snowbird. Sarah will remember this regatta where we're getting chased by Creative, and we have a fleet of, like, I forget what boat was that, RSs or something. There was like 500 of them between us and the finish line. And so every now and then there are 2 regattas out there. Yeah, but I haven't seen 2 regattas being tracked in RaceQs at the same time and overlapping in some weird way. And sometimes you want to know about those other boats anyway. Let's say they affected you. Then I wouldn't mind having, like, oh yeah, that's why I had to, you know, overstand the mark, because there was all that dirt in there from the other boats.
Got it. Thanks.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm happy to sit around and chat or let people go, whatever makes sense for folks.
So I just wanted to take a minute. This is Wayne. I'm in charge of the Heart of CYC campaign. First of all, thanks to everyone on the call that has donated to the fund. The phone-a-thon that we've had this month has been going very well. We've rapidly gone from $231,000 on May 9th to $431,000 as of today. The goal for the haul out is 480. For the end of the year is 508,000. So it's really been on fire. We've been calling some people to get new donations, for people to increase their donations. So that's been going very well. Thank you for the people that have donated. Anyway, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Wayne.
Thanks for all the work, Wayne.
Okay. Sounds like it's going to happen.
Yes, it's definitely going to happen, yes.
All right, well, thanks, Paul. Now, this has been a very nice celebration of RaceQs. Looking forward to seeing everybody out there using it.
Yeah.
So, again.
Let's need some races.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Presentation
Thanks, Paul.